Hey, my name is Eugene from Worker Bee Supply Co. and welcome to another episode of What the Hell Do You Do, where we look at the interesting and unique ways that different people make a living. Today we have Chris Buck on the show. So Chris, why don't you tell us who you are and what the hell do you do?
Absolutely. Well, I'm a photographer. I'm a commercial and advertising photographer. So what that means is I get jobs to shoot pictures for magazines, for advertising, for things in between magazine and advertising, and then I do personal projects too.
And what would you say in terms of, like, you're saying you get jobs for magazines and advertising, like, who are the kind of people that are approaching you? Who are you actually working with on a day-to-day?
So my most regular client is GQ. I also work with The New Yorker, The Guardian, Weekend Magazine out of London. People like that, just sort of regular magazines. I mean, I'll work for more modest magazines too. Usually I determine whether I do the job based on is the approach they want something that interests me, or is it someone I want to photograph, like someone who has an interesting story or just someone who's really famous, and I'm just curious to work with them and make their picture.
And in terms of, like, within the organization, like, what are the roles and what are the job titles like that people have that sort of you actually end up working with?
Sure. So do you mean people who hire me?
Yeah, people who hire you, people that you approach,
Okay.
like reach out to.
So my shoots, the range of what happens on the shoots in terms of staffing ranges a lot. If I do a shoot for myself, a personal project, it's often just me and an intern. The intern's like literally running the laptop. I'll tether the camera to the laptop. So as the images are made, they come in, and we look to make sure they're sharp and properly exposed. And I'll just shoot with available light. And it's very like low key, and we just go crazy and shoot lots of pictures. And that's awesome. And then on the other end, maybe a big ad shoot, you could have 30 to 40 people as part of the team. You have hired models, obviously my photo team, like a photo assistant, digital tech, multiple assistants.
What does digital tech do for people?
The digital tech, they mostly stand around by the computer and make it look like they know what they're doing. They do the same thing as my intern, but they're paid a lot more.
Pretty good.
Okay, and then there's prop stylists, wardrobe stylists, groomers, oftentimes hair and makeup. Then there's a client team, people from the client who's hired me. Well, actually, I'm hired by the ad agency, and they're hired by the client. The client would be the product, whatever they're selling.
Like Microsoft or something.
Sure.
Interesting. And what are you doing on this big set with all these people?
Well, my role varies. Like, if it's a personal shoot, it's all about what I want. If it's a magazine shoot, it's a balance between what the magazine wants and my input, and that varies to some extent, but generally it's a mix of like, maybe 60-40, 60% what the magazine's driving, 40% what I drive, both in terms of their ideas and ideas we collaborate on, or also separate ideas I want to do. And they're all part of the mix. When I'm doing advertising, it's really like 100% driven by the ad agency, and then the client obviously has their input along the way. And then, I have input, but that input is really driven by what their direction is. I'm not like saying, hey, well, let's try this. Unless this is a specific directive that they want help with. In general, I'm really doing what they ask of me. Mm-hmm. I describe advertising photography as being cast as like an actor. They have the script, they have the story, they're directing it, and I'm just playing out the role. I'm helping them bring their story to life.
So why don't we go back a bit? Like, you just released a book, Uneasy, with 30 years of celebrity portraiture work. When someone kind of looks through it or looks through your website or even hears the kind of like companies and magazines you work with, I'm sure everyone's like, oh, I'd love to shoot for GQ, every photographer, right? But in terms of like starting your way down more, I guess, like the kind of like sexy photographer jobs, like the magazine work, the celebrity portraits, what are those like early shoots? Because you didn't just like walk into a magazine, you kind of like almost approached the celebrities first in a way?
Kind of, that's a fair way to put it. I wanted to shoot famous people, and I just went where famous people are. I went to movie festivals, most of the time without any kind of accreditation. I just went and showed up, and if people were around, I'd kind of corner them, or I'd get maybe a commission from a small publication to do a shoot, and sometimes with amazing people too. And when I got those shoots, I worked hard to make them excellent. Obviously, most of the time I failed because I was just starting out, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's fine. But And sometimes I was turned away, like, why are you here? What were you? So that's fine too. I photographed a lot of musicians early on. I was into like what I guess we call alternative music anyways. So the bands I was interested in were playing smallish venues. I got friendly with the promoters sometimes. I mean, it sounds very kind of weird and ambiguous, but I think if you want something, you kind of try to get it and you talk to people who have the access points. And if you want something and you're a nice person, chances are you'll sometimes get what you want. And a lot of times you won't, but a big part of being successful is being able to stomach it not working out. Either you don't get the shoot or you do it and you kind of blow it. You have to be kind of okay with failing and picking up and trying again.
What about also in terms of you're going to shoot, let's say a small magazine hired you and it's like you got some celebrity or someone you're interested in and they have like, we need to get these shots. I know you always try to push slide in some of your own kind of like goals and work into
Sure.
it. Can you talk a bit about that, about maybe more broadly, like while
Sure.
doing work? Kind of.
Here's how I do it. When I'm preparing to do a shoot, I map out all the potential ideas I might do. And then I throw away the ones that are just absurd. But I try to be open to the absurd ones because sometimes I can use them for something else or whatever. It's just good to be open because it opens up all those doors mentally. And then when I get to ideas that might be practical, I try to pull as much of the information I can, like what's the location, how much time are we going to have, are we going to have any support staff, anything, things that might influence, like is there going to be a wardrobe stylist, what are they bringing? So these kind of things. So I try to plan the shots in a way, even though I'm planning everything all at once, I'm kind of planning the shots for me, I'm going deep with them more before the shoot. Because once I'm on set, I'm very focused on my client's goals. So I really need to get what the client wants. One, it's just a professional responsibility. But two, I want to get hired again. So if I'm not delivering what they want, then they're not going to hire me. And they're fine usually for me to do, some portion of the time for my own ideas, and sometimes they use them. But they want to know that I'm prepared and ready to do, their directions as well. The reason why I do my ideas, I prepare deep first, is once I'm on set, I'm so in the moment of doing the client's work that I need to have my ideas ready to move forward to the front of my brain when the opportunity comes. Because in a sense, in that moment, I'm very focused on what the client wants and what's important, and that should be the priority. So if I want to squeeze in that shot in 5 minutes for me, then it needs to be fully prepared and ready, and I can just pull it from the back and move it forward, execute it, and then move on to the next thing.
And it sounds like using mostly those images, like the ones you shot for yourself, is what actually ends up getting you like those next jobs.
Totally. I mean, I'd say the first 10 years of my portfolio were the kind of whatever, the extra shots or whatever, or they were things I shot for myself without an assignment. And then over time, people began they'd often hire me for what I do, but then not want me to do, they want me to do this other thing, so, and then eventually became more balanced.
And it's a bit about just like navigating that about like on set with the client, seeing how far you can push it, how...
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Like when you say they hired you, but then that's not really what they wanted you to do. Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, here's the thing, is that most of the time the client is not on set. Usually it's me and my team, however big it is, and there's no one else. So even now, like I'll do shoots, no client on set. So for me to squeeze in my shot, it's not like I have to seek permission from my client or say, hey, do you mind if I do this thing? Because they're not there.
You just kind of keep going.
I keep going. And the thing about it is, as long as I'm fulfilling the goals that we've pre-discussed, it's a non-issue.
Cool. So let's kind of like pull out a bit.
One thing I will mention though, because you kind of, the way you frame it made me think of something, is that I'm not telling the subject or the publicist what ideas are for me and what ideas are driven by the magazine, because essentially they see everything as being for the magazine.
You give them to the magazine
Totally.
also to use, right? So,
yeah. I mean, and oftentimes they are. I mean, my cover of George W. Bush when he was running for president was like the extra thing I did for me, and it became the cover.
There you go. So always kind of
Yeah.
throw in some of your own ideas.
Yep. Sometimes they're like, what's this about? I'm like, oh, don't worry about it.
So that's like the shooting aspect, but as a photographer, that's most of your time is not spent being a photographer.
Unfortunately, it's not.
So
no.
what does your day look like, or a week look like? I know day to days might be different, but
Sure.
what are the things you spend most of your time actually doing?
Surely I spend most of my time doing email. And that, I know it's not a very sexy answer, but it's just true. Like, it's annoying. And I don't really know a way around it. If any of your viewers have any ideas for me, chris@chrisbuck.com. I'm happy for any suggestions on how to manage it. Because they have to be dealt with, and they need to be dealt with politely. And that's how I often get work. So I need to check my email constantly and be letting people know, like, yes, I'm interested, let's do a call or whatever it is. Managing all kinds of requests, like, I want to assist you, I want to be your intern, we want to do a story about you, we want to sell you something, and the sell you ones I don't really respond to so much. But yeah, I mean, and then just running errands, a lot of promotional stuff, like keeping up social media. I spend a lot of time, Instagram, Facebook, that stuff. Doing a lot of time on that too, which is kind of a waste of time. Sorry, but it is. It feels like a waste of time, but you kind of need to do it because everyone else does it, and you want your name to be in the front of their minds along with your top competition.
Yeah. Maybe now let's talk a bit about, you're saying like your portfolio was mostly kind of like these like extra shots you added on, but then also a mix of personal work. Can you talk a bit about how you maybe like think, or just like why you do side projects and personal projects, and what role specifically they play in getting new work and promoting yourself?
So when I was talking about that before, that was more my early portfolio, which how I built the initial base. And you're right, I essentially built the initial base. It was super hard to get sittings, but when I did, I worked hard. Enough of them got into the portfolio that I began to get work from magazines, and that's primarily how I get my at least editorial work is that way. But I basically took up doing personal projects because there's a time when I just wasn't working much, and I thought, well, if I do personal projects, it'll create interest among art directors, and art directors want to work with people who are artistic, so they'll hire me. So I started like 4 projects at once, which are like mostly out there now. The All Fours, the Lookalike series, Isn't, Presence, and the Chris Bucks I kind of revived. The Chris Bucks I haven't finished yet. It's only been about 12 or 13 years I've been shooting it.
Can you talk about the concept behind that? Just because
the Chris Bucks is making serious portraits with people who share my full name. And
how many people have you found?
I found hundreds, but I only shot like 16. I mean, after a while, I can only photograph so many like Caucasian middle-aged men. I mean, Caucasian middle-aged men are awesome, obviously, but photographically, there's just not a lot of variety. So, I'm trying to find a Chris Buck baby. So if you know any Chris Buck babies, hook me up.
All right.
Small children.
Heard it here first.
Yep. But yeah, so my first book was built around one of these projects, Presence, which is portraits of celebrities where they're not visible. Came out in 2012, and it did great. Got lots of press, sold a bunch of books, but didn't really lead to work. I guess because it was just a bunch of empty scenes. It was a conceptual project, but so in a way I decided that I want to do personal projects in a way that is not about getting work. So I decided my next big personal project would be something that might lose me work. I thought that was a good instinct. So now I'm photographing boyfriends and husbands of exotic dancers.
So if you know any of those, also email chris@chrisbuck.com.
Hook me up, yeah.
How far in are to that? Already?
I'm about a third of the way through the project. I do portraits, and then I also interview them. So the final book project will have Q&As with each of the partners, and portraits.
Cool.
Yeah, it's super exciting.
So what about like someone who's kind of sees the work you do, maybe is like really interested in magazines or portraits or people or celebrities? What are some things they can start doing today, maybe, to kind of set them on that path in a good direction? And also maybe what's one thing that they should maybe avoid doing?
There's a magazine I wanted to work with, and the art director said, your work is great, but you shoot all rock and roll people, and we shoot, businessmen, politicians, more establishment type authorities, people who wear ties and such. And this is back in the day when there was less women involved in those worlds. So he's like, you need to make some pictures like that for me. So I literally went out, found a family friend who was a lawyer, photographed him in my style, but as a lawyer, and they gave me a job. Mm-hmm. So my point with that story is, look at where you want to be and make some pictures that fit that ilk. And what that means is not necessarily changing your visual style or your approach to making work, but look at the actual content.
Yeah.
Like, in a way, I think you probably do better to photograph the similar kinds of subject matter, but in a unique new way than you would be just to mock what's already existing in the magazine.
And that can almost apply, like, not only to, right, it could apply to designers, to illustrators,
absolutely,
to painters, whoever, right?
I mean, this same art director said to me, he's like, these people come in here with a bunch of like pictures of flowers. We do portraits. Why are they showing me flowers? And he's just basically saying, look at the magazine. Look at what we do before you come in or before you drop off your book. We're not going to just look at you and say, you're a genius. We're changing the direction of the magazine.
Yeah. They might.
They might, but probably not.
And what's something that maybe is like common that people suggest, or something else that you're like, well, actually, I don't think it's worth your time, or you should avoid doing that?
One thing I would actually say, I've never been asked this question before, so it's really interesting. I actually think that I would de-emphasize social media. I mean, yes, you should be on that and all that, but I don't think that followers, I think a large following on social media, I don't think leads to work. It can in certain ways, but very niche ways.
Certain kinds of work, maybe.
I mean, it's funny because like I have assistants who have like 10 times as many followers as me, but on any given day, they're working for me. And I'm shooting for the big magazine. I'm shooting for GQ and they're working for me. But then you hear these stories of so-and-so started shooting for Vogue by doing their Instagram. It's like, yeah, but I'm already shooting for GQ. So, and the Instagram isn't doing anything for me that way. I mean, it's fun, but it's not like it's not leading to work in that sense. So I think that there's this sort of like buzz about get followers and that will lead to work. And I think, except for in like a specific niche areas, I kind of think it's not a place to put your energy.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Why don't, if there's anything you want to promote or tell people to check out where they can see more of your work, let them know.
Well, my new book is out, Uneasy. It's 30 years of portraits. It's available online, chrisbuckuneasy.com. Go be wowed.
And what's your website, like your portfolio website? Someone wants to see you.
chrisbuck.com. I mean, what's interesting is that I don't really put the uneasy, like the historical work of the portrait work I did is not on my main website because the main website's to get new work. It's like, well, it's to buy. I want people to buy the book, but my website's to get new work. It's not to show off how cool I am.
Yeah.
Well, it works for that too.
Awesome. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy the series, be sure to hit the like button and then go subscribe to our channel. We'll be doing a lot more of these and we're releasing a new video every week now. So be sure to stay in touch.